So welcome everybody, lovely to see you here. It's a bigger group than I thought actually. My name's Maureen, I'm Secretary of Friends of Kelly's Bush, and we've got various people here who will introduce themselves as they take you around. We'll be splitting into two groups, that was the original plan, and walking for about half an hour and then coming together again, but we'll see how that works out. And then before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand, the Wallamadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It's quite appropriate to acknowledge this area because this was used as a summer camp by the Indigenous people, and a lot of the time the early settlers saw the bush being lit up and fire going through so that the animals would obviously be caught by the Indigenous people. We're lucky we've got actually a midden as well and rocky overhangs, and they're all in the bush, so you'll see those hopefully today. We've also got a couple of sandstone paths, sorry, and sandstone ponds with axe grinding grooves in them, so that's really nice to have in Kelly's Bush. Andrew's done a great job of summarising most of the fun facts. I know you've got a booklet about it, and I've actually given a whole load of booklets for everybody which are potted history of what happened at Kelly's Bush, plus some nice photos of the common flora, which I'm sure you'll all be interested in, so there should be one for everybody. We've got, well, I was going to be at the lookout because it's quite a stunning site and it looks over the river towards Sydney and the Harbour Bridge and Cockatoo Island, which is obviously was a big industrial area. And the deep water frontages of this part of Sydney were really important for industries which needed the river for transport. So in the 1890s, Clark's Point, where we're standing, was just full of industry and industrial industries, heavy industries. So it was Atlas Engineering, the Parramatta Steamship Company, Colonial Oil, Mort's Dock, which was the forerunner of Woolwich Dock, and the Sydney Smelting Company, plus lots of others. And the smelting operation was the one that was closely associated with Kelly's Bush. They used to throw a lot of their slag in the bush, which we found out. But apart from that, it was owned and operated by 3 generations of the Kellys. And it began in 1895. The company operated for over 70 years, but the tin gradually became less desirable, the smelting works, and it closed in 1967, by which time it produced half the tin refined in Australia. So it was quite a big production, even though it was a small company. And the smelting manager's house, which we were going to show you, was just behind us in the bush there. And we found the remains of the garden. So he had some terrace gardens, which were really nice, and they were buried under a mountain of weeds. And about 4 years ago, we found this lovely historic garden. So once the industry left, the developers wanted to move in. You can imagine the wonderful site that this would have been, overlooking the water. And A.V. Jennings wanted to build 147 home units, 8 stories, 3 buildings, 8 stories high. There was strong community opposition to the proposal, like there is, you know, today in these sort of things. And in September 1970, a group of local women formed the Battlers for Kelly's Bush. And you're probably aware of these 13 determined ladies who were very sort of middle class, so quite unusual that they would be activist in any way. They were completely alien to them, but they were so determined to save the bush for their children because their children played extensively in it. So they lobbied council, they lobbied the New South Wales government, they talked to journalists, they had picnics in the park, picnics in the bush, but all to no avail. Finally in 1971, the New South Wales Minister for Planning informed them that the bush was about to be rezoned in favour of the developer. Yeah. So help came in from a phone call from a union organiser, Rodney Cavalier of the Miscellaneous Workers Union, who suggested contacting the unions. So they did that, and because they could prove they represented the wider community, it wasn't just these 13 ladies, they got unanimous support from the Builders Labourers Federation led by Jack Mundey. And also the federated engine drivers, who included the bulldozer drivers. So they said, no, we're not going to bulldoze the bush, which was wonderful. And then the BLF, then they put a ban, so that was the green ban. And Jennings said, okay, we'll use non-union labour. And then the workers, the BLF workers who were working on a Sydney block in the city, said, okay, we're just going to stop work on this block and leave it unfinished. So Jennings backed down. Yeah. So the developer didn't win in that case, thank God. So the world's first green ban was here at Kelly's Bush. And Jack Mundey named it a green ban. It was a black ban originally, but he had the inspiration to call it a green ban. So it was a clever idea. And in 1971, that was placed on Kelly's. And then, it led to a further 42 green bans and the saving of over 100 heritage buildings in Sydney. So that was wonderful.
Park, I believe.
And yes, and the rocks, all sorts of buildings. So it was wonderful. And the battlers kept lobbying the New South Wales government because it still wasn't saved. It was just a green ban. And finally in 1983, the state purchased it as open space. And so then it was saved, thank God. So the liaison between these middle class matrons and the unions was very unusual, but lifelong friendships developed. And as our battlers showed us all those years ago, their courage and determination was a gift to the environment. Yeah. And we owe a huge debt of gratitude to them. And the courageous unionists who put their jobs on the line for the community good.
Yeah, what was in it for them?
They wanted the community good. They actually didn't want to bulldoze the bush.
Were they members of the community?
No, they weren't members, but they were happy to support them. Yeah, they were very community minded. Jack Mundey was very community minded. Yeah, when they asked for help. Yeah. Finally, I'll quote Kylie Tennant, who was an author and activist and one-time resident of Hunters Hill. She said, Kelly's Bush is a symbol of our lost land. Take away Kelly's Bush and you take away one more assurance that in man is left a possibility for the future. The unborn Australian will ask for his birthright and be handed a piece of concrete. So, thank God that was saved. So that's sort of like a potted history, and that's about it. I thought we were going to just try and walk a little bit now, but
wow,
what do you think?
That's amazing we got that in under these conditions. Yay!
Your pleasure.
Now this is the famous Aboriginal pond area that is registered with the New South Wales Parks and Wildlife Organisation, and it's the only fresh water on the peninsula, and this is where they would have used this as a summer camp when they used to come through. And there's areas over here where Liz is standing, where there was axe, where they used to sharpen. Over here, where they used to do sharpening and everything like that.
Along the little round dot ones in the front near your foot.
And it was really only recently that this has actually been, we found another pond. So, and it was actually always, when I first came in 1998, it was just covered with dirt and reeds and branches and things. I didn't even know it was a pond. So it's been very nice to, just recently it's all been exposed.
So we're just going to talk a little bit about the bigger picture of where Kelly's Bush fits in and what we've been doing for a very long time. We started with our first habitat planting back in about 2009, which was down in Riverglade Reserve, and I don't know if you can see on the map way down here, it's actually that spot there, is where we first started. We're over here at the moment, so long way away. Over the time we've actually been working on we've worked out close to 9 kilometres of habitat. This is a bit of a diagram that shows you how to plant small bird habitat, and it's not about necessarily that doing it in a circle like that, but it's about having those elements within it. So having a nice dense understory, some maybe spiky plants that the little birds can get away from the bigger birds, and creating habitat links between. And I'm going to give you some of these before we finish, because I do happen to have some in my bag. Never miss a sales opportunity. So what we've been trying to do is to create a habitat corridor right through Hunters Hill and connect up the bits of bushland that we can connect. But what we're working on now is going a step further and moving from not only connecting the bits of bushland, which is what these projects were all about. And Jackie can tell you in a minute about some of the grant projects that we've had over time, and how the bush care people fit in and what our partners are within those projects. But what we're working on now is not only the green bits here, but we're doing habitat network. So we've actually taken it to the next step. We're going to do a habitat network across Hunters Hill, which connects Kelly's Bush as well as all the other bits of bushland. And we're engaging with private property owners to try and convince them that they would like to put habitat in their gardens, so that we can actually connect all those bits of bushland and make it a functional habitat network right across Hunters Hill.
We've actually started door knocking. We've had really positive feedback. Everyone loves the idea of bringing small birds back, and they tell me about their frogs and their blue-tongued lizards in their backyard, and I've been overwhelmed. I thought it'd be a hard sell, but it hasn't been at all.
Have you mentioned the word cats and cages, or?
I haven't had too many that have had cats on the peninsula anyway. Yeah.
But the advantage of if you put nice spiky plants in is that the birds can get away from the bigger birds and the cats and the dogs, because they can't get into those spiky plants. So we're talking hakeas, with sort of those spiky needles, and very dense plantings, so that'll keep all of those species away as well. So
we've done this through partnership and grant funding. So we've had many partners ranging from schools, scouts, corporate. We're a host for Landcare Australia. They've done quite a number of days for us. Like I said, School Scouts, but other agencies like RMS have been on board. National Parks and Wildlife joined us through one of the grants down at Bedlam Bay. And we've had a series of state government grants. They usually extended over 3 years, and the first one was to connect between Bedlam Bay, the lower Parramatta River sites, Bedlam Bay through to Kelly's Bush. We extended that for another 2 years, and then we got a coastal estuary grant to do this current project as well. Yeah, so we employ our contractors for grant funding, basically. Yeah.
So we've partnered with Scouts. We've had Scouts doing plantings, corporates doing plantings. We've got quite a number of sites on RMS land, so underneath the Gladesville Bridge and all the on-ramps and things. We've got little habitat pockets going through under the bridges to make it, those connected corridors going through.
And we've got 11 bush care sites, and probably 6 of them in the corridors, and the bush care people have done a hell of a lot of work in these areas as well.
Yeah, if we didn't.
We're doing bird surveys every 5 years. Yeah.
And believe it or not, this is a fabulous corridor for little tiny birds. We have so many little birds in this corridor, and because it's getting connected, we're getting more little birds because they've got more habitat. So when we first started, I have a very controversial thing, and I say don't pull out lantana, because when we started, the idea was that we'd plant replacement habitat, then we'd take out the lantana, which is mostly where the little birds live. So before you actually start removing any weeds, always go and have a little look and listen to see if anything's using that area's habitat. But what we've found is we've been adding habitat, and the little birds now, you've got the original family still stays in the lantana, but we get a new family group starting up in the areas that we've been planting. So you're actually getting more small birds around the corridor. And considering how close we are to the city, I think this is the best population of little birds, possibly the only population of little birds this close to the city. so it's just really good. There's probably a few little pockets, maybe in Sydney Park lands, maybe you've got little birds, but it's the best population, and it's actually a functioning corridor. So we're very excited about it.
So with your private landowners, do you have a something visual for people who aren't part of the project so that they understand that this project's happening, that this garden is part of this incredible corridor, and that they too could be part of that? Yeah,
so we've got a few other materials apart from this that we actually hand out, but Jackie and I both separately going door knocking and talking to people about small bird habitat, about what they can do in their garden. If they don't want to talk right then, we give them the contact details. So we actually run a community nursery not far away from here. It's actually in Ryde, but we look after each other. So yeah, there's more information that they can get. And Jackie and I just did a stall at Mookaboola, which is the annual festival for Hunters Hill. And
we've also promoted, had case studies on our website as well.
We're actually International Environmental Weed Foundation is our official name. On the REO, the Register of Environmental Organisations, we're IEWF Public Fund, so that we can collect money into the public fund. But since we started this project, we actually ran a series of workshops back in about 2009 as part of an environmental trust grant project to do Restoring Natural Capital workshops. And out of those workshops, we actually found that people noticed that we were losing our small native birds. So we thought it was a really good way of having a linchpin that we could talk to people, because people like talking about little birds. They don't like talking about weeds that much, but little birds, everyone loves little birds. So it was a good linchpin to talk. And if you look after the little birds, basically you're looking after the habitat for everything. Because it all flows on. Yeah.
And Jackie, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about Hunters Hill Council Bush Camp program. When it started, how many groups you have, when do they meet?
Okay, sure. We have 11 groups. We have around 80 active volunteers, which has been pretty steady over a 20-year period. I think they started roughly around, I know Friends of Boronia Park started in the late 80s, and Friends of Kelly's Bush started in 1995. We generally have a program that runs the first to the third weekend of the month, and that's once a month, but the Friends of Kelly's Bush work every Monday for 2 hours. Basically, it's just been a steady program. I said before, we've got 6 bush care groups that have been part of the corridor projects as well and taken on that work as well.
When COVID allows, Hunters Hill Council does really nice Christmas parties. Yay!
We're just trying to get to be a bit more diverse. We're trying to get into stream watch and sort of include other activities rather in addition to weed removal. And we've always been very small. It's just me and a weekend coordinator. So we've just sort of done the basics for quite a long time. But now we're looking to sort of try to make offer more activities and look at people's interests and what they want to do and that sort of thing.
And funding's always tight with small councils, so Jackie actually takes a lot of corporate groups, and through getting paid for having the corporate groups for the day, that gives her the funding to run the bush care program.
Yeah, that funds all my native plant purchases and half my bush care tools, basically. Yeah. And they're always, I haven't had a bad group. They've always been really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd just like to thank Jackie and Bev for coming out in the rain and speaking to us all.
You're welcome.